Welcome to the Woman Worriers podcast, where we're working to help you call a truce with your anxiety. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. Now, here's your host, Elizabeth Cush, LCPC.
Welcome back to the Woman Worriers podcast. Thanks again for joining us this week. We are going to be talking to Laura Vaillancourt about being a caregiver. But before we get started, I just wanted to say thanks. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for following us on social media. Thanks for any comments or suggestions. I just appreciate that all of you take the time to spend some time with us here on the podcast. I am your host, Elizabeth Cush. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm also the owner of Progression Counseling in Annapolis, Maryland. You can follow us on social media, on Instagram and Twitter at Woman Worriers. We're also on Facebook at Woman Worriers and on Pinterest. Under my Progression Counseling page, there is a board for Woman Worriers podcast episodes. So we're going to be talking to Laura, who is the owner of Elder Care Counseling and Guidance Services Consulting, where she provides coaching, counseling, and care management services. I know lots of women are caregivers. They tend to be the caregivers just anyway in families, but oftentimes they're the ones taking care of elders. So we're going to talk to her about that and why it can be difficult and ways maybe that we can better manage being caregivers. Let's get started. Hi, Laura, and welcome to the Woman Worriers podcast.
Hi, well, thank you for having me. I'm really thrilled to be on your podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. I am excited that this worked out and excited for you that you'll be launching a podcast at some point in the future as well. But I wondered if you wouldn't mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself and the work you do and, what inspired you to get into that field.
Oh, I'd love to share. Yes. So I am a licensed mental health counselor and a geriatric mental health specialist. But really, my first love is working with family caregivers who are caring for someone that has dementia. And so through the years, I've worked in nursing homes and hospitals and skilled nursing facilities. And about 8 years ago, I launched my own private business providing counseling and geriatric care management and consulting to families. And so really what my role began to look like is as more of a guide to families in navigating the aging world and caring for their loved ones. And I just found that people, when you're in a hospital or a skilled nursing facility, you have a social worker and you have a team there that if they're doing their job, they're guiding you through the steps and explaining the process.
Yeah.
But when people go home, they're lost and they're getting advice from all these well-meaning people, but they really often just want to do the right thing, but they don't know what it is. And when you have your own emotional experience happening along with navigating sometimes these complicated, areas in the medical field, or even financial field and legal field, and everything that can come with caring for someone. Yeah. So this work has just really, really taken off. I think there's a huge need in our communities to have this sort of consulting or guidance. And
my mother-in-law recently passed, being a direct family member, I wasn't really in the loop with I wasn't actively participating, but there was a lot of decision making around, she was at home, one of the kids was taking care of her. It was really hard on them. And then when it was time to move her to a facility where she could get more round-the-clock care. It was just so hard to figure it out, and it was stressful, and I wish I'd had you in our lives.
Yeah. Well, I just want to validate that for you. Often people, sometimes they think that because they don't live close or because they're not living with their family member, maybe their loved one is in a facility, or it's a sibling that's living with them, or it's caregivers that are being hired. The reality is that no matter what role you are playing in that system, it still has an impact. Everybody is experiencing things in their own way. And the other piece is that it's a change in your relationship with that person.
Yes.
Whether you're a daughter or whether you're an in-law or whether you're a spouse, suddenly the whole dynamic really shifts. And you are not only mourning the health situation or circumstances that are going on, but you're also mourning the change of that relationship that you had.
Oh, yeah,
so
definitely.
There's just layers that can really have an impact.
Yeah. And my mother-in-law didn't have dementia. Maybe early signs of just old age type dementia, but not Alzheimer's. But I would imagine that having someone, you're a parent, whoever it is, that you have to care for who does have dementia, like that adds a whole nother level of, stress, but also care.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And what I hear the most from families is, I just want to do the right thing, and I don't know what that looks like.
Right.
And so, there's so many layers. Like I said, a huge part is the importance of educating and being knowledgeable about the diagnosis.
Yeah.
Whether it's a type of dementia, because there's several types of dementia out there, or it's something else that is, causing the need for care. Educating yourself can be so important because it can explain so many things. I mean, sometimes there are some challenges with mood. If someone is feeling down or depressed or anxious, or if there's maybe some challenging behaviors that occur, or a focus or a fixation on certain things, understanding the diagnosis can really help the caregiver understand sometimes what's happening with the brain, sometimes what's happening with the coping mechanisms of the person who's experiencing that. But education is always key. And a huge part of my work, although I, call myself kind of a guide or a consultant, really a huge part of my work is educating. Because what I find is when people are informed and they're educated, then they can make the right decisions for their family, based on their unique family's culture or, belief system or situation. They will know the right choices to make, but they need to be informed.
Yeah.
So that's really I think the core of what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would imagine that makes such a big difference to know, one, about the diagnoses, but two, just, what does this look like going forward? All of that. Now, including, really not having the knowledge, what are some of the other stressors that caregivers might encounter in this part of their lives, as being caregivers?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think it can hit people off guard. They may go into a situation thinking, okay, I've got this, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to have these resources. I'm going to do these things. And then what often happens is you get so engulfed in the day-to-day that you forget to lose sight of the bigger picture. You start to just it's just survival, really. So what I often hear is that almost always across the board is that people feel isolated. They feel isolated in so many ways. They feel isolated from the person that they're caring for, because again, that relationship dynamic is shifting and changing.
Yeah.
They feel isolated from their friends or family members even, because unless you're in it and experiencing it, it's very hard to feel connected with others. So, and they feel isolated from themselves. I often hear people tell me, I don't even know who I am anymore, or I've forgotten what it's like to be just me and not have this role. So I think that is really central and core to the theme of being a caregiver is we want to support people and not feeling isolated, remembering who they are and remembering to tap into themselves and learning how to access outside support and recognizing that they can't do this all, on their own.
Yeah. And I would bet that thinking about how life-changing that can be, even if the person you're caring for is now in a facility, like the loss, as you said before, like the grieving what the relationship was, but also just grieving what you had that is no longer.
Yes, that's such a good point, because I think that gets lost in the busyness of putting together the pieces and the planning, all these practical things that kind of come to the surface. And our medical field really emphasizes that too. This is the plan, and this is the diagnosis, and this is where you're going to move, and this is the money situation. And we really forget that this deep within, this is a life-changing occurrence. And this is an opportunity for growth and self-reflection. There's opportunity to really honor this stage in life. While for some people this could be a very long stage, it can go on for years and years. For others, it's very short. Yeah. And so paying attention to your inner experience, if possible, really setting aside to be really mindful about what is happening and just, just having that moment or many small moments of that self-reflection, I think is just really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine too that, when the time comes, if the time comes where more managed care has to, whether you're going to a facility or you're bringing people in, that there's some guilt there too, like that I can't do this anymore, that it's, that it's too much. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, that I hear that so much and people experience that. I think especially for women, in our culture and society, we are, there's this sort of, I'm using quotes, expectation that we are able to handle it all.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And we put this burden really upon ourselves, but that is from our greater culture and society that does that to us too. And sometimes we project also how, caregivers may have this ideal image of how they would like it to go, whether that's I'm going to move mom in and I'm going to take care of her till the day she dies, or I'm going to find the best possible care for her and it's going to look like this. Yeah. Well, the reality is we know life doesn't always, go as planned.
No.
And so, it's just, I think the best advice that I could give is to be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Sometimes we have to take it day by day. Sometimes it's moment by moment. And, but really, the guilt piece, I read this book when I was in undergrad school by an author. Her name is Stephanie Kuntz. She is faculty at the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. She wrote a book called More Work for Mother.
Huh. No.
And she's a sociology professor. It was a fascinating book because it talked about as our culture progressed and new innovations became available to us, like washing machines and dishwashers and
Right. The
how you would think
conveniences.
the conveniences. Yeah. What the book is really about is how we are taught to believe that these are conveniences created to make life easier for the tasks of women.
Yeah.
But the reality is it really just compounded the expectation even more. That not only are women still, again, this is all in quotes, expected to, do the laundry and do the cooking and the cleaning and the caring for the children, but now also work full-time jobs and now also care for our aging parents or family members. And the reality is that this is just, it's not sustainable and it's not realistic.
Yeah.
Whether you are superwoman or not, you need help. That saying, it takes a village, is absolutely true. And so one of the things that I often encourage my clients to do is start thinking about how to build your support team. And your support team can look like, on one hand, all the professionals. You have a great doctor, you have a great elder law attorney, or you have a great financial planner, but then also on the more personal side, your support team of, who do you feel safe in expressing your needs and feelings to? And that can look very different for everyone. Sometimes you have a person that person to you is just the person you have fun with, that you don't want to talk about your stuff going on, but you can, sure check out with them. And that's important medicine.
Right.
And then there's the other friend that you can really just, maybe vent to or dump on. But just taking a real stock of who are the people in your life, and really, if you were to write every name down, what do each individual give you? How are they feeding you when you need that?
Yeah.
I think that's important to do.
Oh, definitely. Well, and I'm just thinking about just other, some of the clients that I've seen over the years, but also, just knowing that sometimes relationships, if you're taking care of a parent, maybe that relationship wasn't that great to begin with. And now here you are needing to be the caregiver. And again, these expectations that, it's all good. We're going to forgive and forget. We're going to love them no matter what, which hopefully, you can get to that point, but maybe not. Right. And now here you are. Yeah. And so there might be some anger and frustration that
Absolutely.
Here I am now caring for you.
Yes. I think I have been most surprised by how many people that I have met over the years that are in that exact position.
Yeah.
Where there's someone that I'm working with someone now who hasn't spoken to their mother in over 20 years and now is her primary caregiver. There was a situation that occurred and there was no one else.
Wow.
This comes up more often than I would have expected.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very unique position to be in because there's a lot of unfinished business.
Right.
A lot of stuff that hasn't been able to be said or worked out. And now often the older person is not capable of having the insight or the ability to really work through in a way that a person might hope.
Yeah.
And what an opportunity, right, for self-growth. I can only imagine what that would be like, being in someone's shoes in that position and to step into that role.
Yeah.
So just as important as with anyone else, it's so important to really be clear about what your boundaries are and where you need to access outside help and guidance, and again, the importance of self-care.
Oh yeah.
Because the layers of unfinished sort of stuff that can come up.
Oh my gosh, so much. I would imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And caregiving. I have not myself had to take care of my. My dad passed, but he had a his wife was able to take care of him, and my mom is still active and doing her thing and is in good shape. But for a period of time, my husband had his knee replaced, and so I was his caregiver during that time. And I can remember being like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I just have to get out of here, like I felt stuck in the house, and very, he needed me, I knew it would pass. And so there was that. But I would imagine it could very easily lead to feeling burned out, feeling like, that there's just no end in sight.
Yes. And often, in a position of caring for an older or aging person, it does feel like that because, oh boy, the guilt that I really hear from families a lot is, I can't wait for my mom or my dad or my spouse to die. Mm-hmm. And that can, you can imagine to get to the place where you're feeling that, and then the layer of guilt that, follows.
Oh, yeah.
It really just speaks to the desperation to have to know that it's gonna end. And it isn't that to know that your loved one will die. I try to reframe that. It's that this level of stress will end.
Yes.
That period, of stress in your life, that there will be a change. And the reality is it will, right? Nothing will last forever, and things shift and change, and things end as well.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing in those situations is to, and believe me, this is so easy for me to sit here and say. I get it. When you're living it, it is totally, different.
Yeah.
And what can be so helpful is to just be conscious, right? To not just fall into this rhythm where you're not even thinking about yourself anymore, but to be really conscious about your self-care. And self-care can look like so many things. It can be really small things, like every time you go to the bathroom, take a moment, shut the door, turn the light off, and just take a deep breath. I mean, it can just be as simple as that.
Absolutely.
To something bigger, like, having someone come stay the night at the house so that you get a chance to go away. Even if you just go sleep somewhere, it doesn't, you don't have to be entertained. But taking those moments can be huge, and building them in, like the example of the bathroom, building it into a habit that you already do every day is really helpful too, because then you're not having to stop a routine or make more time that you don't really have.
Right.
If you can build it into when you're cooking or when you're cleaning, to pop in a podcast, or, just do something kind for yourself.
Yeah.
Is really important.
Yeah. Listen to music that you love or whatever. Yeah. Well,
creating I was going to add too. I like to think about the concept of creating a care plan for yourself.
Oh, wow. That's such a great idea.
Yeah, we do this for our patients all the time, but to really think about yourself as if you were caring for yourself, or if you had someone else caring for you, what would they need to know about you? What would they need to know that really helps bring you down when you feel like you're in a crisis moment? Or what are the small things that you could be doing daily to, maintain some semblance of peace and sanity sometimes?
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh. Well, and I know for some women, because there are these quote unquote expectations about how much we can take on, how much we should be doing, there can be a lot of anxiety around asking for help.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if you have any tips about how to make that easier for people, or just I don't know.
That's a great question. I think that's something that just women in general struggle with. We aren't really taught how to ask for help.
No, we're not.
So, the one thing that I hear a lot is that we don't even know what to ask for. So it's it's not always we don't know how to ask for help. It's that we don't know what to ask for. So caregivers will say this a lot to me. And so we'll sit sometimes together, and I'll start the ball rolling by saying, well, what would it be like if someone made dinner once a week for you and your loved one, or if someone took your loved one out anywhere for just an hour a week, or we just start brainstorming those ideas, and really then it can the juices start flowing. But the other big piece that you mentioned is asking for it. And so I always encourage families, and this may seem so simple, but sometimes it's the simple things that can make such a difference. And so if you have a support team, if your listeners have people that they can talk to or family members that are involved, I say get the calendar out and just encourage every person involved to pick a day. And it doesn't even matter what they are committing to do, whether that's make dinner or go on an outing or whatever it is. I think that what was the most helpful for our caregivers is to have time away. It may not even be the tasks. It may not even be, I need someone to clean my house or cook dinner. It's just having time away. And we have a hard time asking for that.
Yeah, because it feels selfish or something.
Right.
I can just feel the stress of having to say, I just don't want to be here for a while.
Yes. I need a nap.
Right.
or I need to just go sit in a coffee shop and zone out for a couple hours. Or And so again, you don't even have to tell the people or whoever's coming and what you're doing. You just need that time. And that can be really helpful. For some people, I've met with some caregivers that really miss having their home to themselves.
Oh, yeah.
You know how it is when it's just you and no one else, and you can just be in your space. So taking the loved one out can be really important. And for others, they need to get out of the house because they're there all the time. And so being able to leave and not have to worry about things. But I think the most important thing is really reframing, what it is to be asking for help. And maybe you don't call it asking for help. Maybe you call it, again, creating a care plan for your loved one. And you can't manage everything on that care plan. You can't be the sole provider, and you aren't. Again, they have a doctor, they have, other practitioners that are working with them. And so just reframing your role so that you are not the sole and only provider for this person's care. And I'll be honest with you, the person that's receiving the care, it's really beneficial for them to have someone else in their life too.
Yeah.
They may get tired of seeing you 24 hours a day as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if there were tips or resources that you felt would be important for the listeners to know about in terms of, getting the support you need or whatever, just being a caregiver, is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah. Well, there's some practical resources, that I'll share, but then also just that sort of internal piece of be gentle with yourself. You're not an expert at this. No one is. Nobody plans to become a caregiver. We're often just kind of thrown into it.
Yeah.
And so the more gentle you can be with yourself through this process, because you'll be an expert by the end when you won't need to do it anymore. But during the process, and reach out to others. I mean, there are some fabulous support groups, online avenues. And as far as professional resources, every community has their own, but sort of a national one that you can reach out to would be every community has their own area agency on aging.
Yes.
Sometimes they call it something different, but they have a family caregiver support program or some version of that in your community. And that little, branch under the umbrella of Area Agency on Aging, you as the caregiver would be the client. And so they often have support groups and education groups and workshops. And in my community, I think most communities, they'll offer counseling to the caregiver. And
Nice.
sometimes they'll offer respite. So they'll have, 4 hours a week. They'll pay for someone to come in to give you a break. So reaching out, and tapping into some of that could be really helpful.
Yeah.
And then I might just take a moment and plug a colleague of mine in Florida. She's a psychologist, and I'm in Washington State. So we're on opposite ends of the country. We are hosting an online dementia caregiver summit. Yeah. And so that's going to be on November 11th through the 22nd, but it's going to be up for a month. And so we've recruited professionals and doctors and all kinds of amazing people across the country. And they will be giving talks on, really, our focus is the caregiver and self-care and how do you get through this? And, here's some support and here's some tips and here's some guidance. So it's a free event.
Well, definitely. I will include the link to that if you send it to me in the show notes so people can find that. That sounds great. And then how do people find you?
Well, I have an online practice. And so they can find me at Laura V as in Victor. So it's lauravcoaching.com. And I do consultations for folks across the country. And again, just navigating and helping them come up with a plan, and whether that's a support plan or a practical plan. I'm more than happy. People can just schedule with me through my website. It's pretty easy.
Awesome. Yeah. I will also include that in the show notes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for spending time with us today. I know that this is, my sister and I talk a lot about it in terms of my mom aging and, what's that going to look like? Because my sister's on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, my brothers are scattered, and it's like, oh man, it is going to be, it's hard. It's hard.
It is. And you're right. Our society looks so different. People are scattered. And so learning how to meet the needs of our family members from a distance is just huge. Yeah.
So huge. Well, thanks again for being a part of the podcast. And, I look forward to when your podcast is up too.
Oh, thank you. I will let you know. I'm calling it, I do have a name for it. Okay. We're going to call it Life on Repeat.
Oh, wow.
Yes, for dementia caregivers.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, we will look forward to checking that out when you get it up.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this.
This is great. Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed that conversation with Laura. Caregiving can be a very hard job, but I think, as she pointed out, if you have in place people you can turn to for support, but also for help, and making care for yourself a part of the care plan for the person you're taking care of. Because, I think there are so many metaphors for this, but if you are running on empty, it's pretty hard to go the distance if you don't have the energy for yourself. If you are not energized, if you're not nourished. And I know it takes a lot. It takes a lot out of you, and it's really important that the self-care piece is also a priority. Well, I hope if you are a caregiver that you are taking care of yourself this week. And even if you're not a caregiver, take care of yourself this week. It's important. We need it. We forget about it sometimes as women, those expectations of how much we should be doing, holding on to, carrying. Maybe put some of that down. Maybe make the priority you this week. Ciao for now from this Woman Worrier.
Thanks for listening and subscribing to the Woman Worriers podcast. Music was written and performed by Andy Cush. If you'd like more information on this episode, you can find the show notes, the resources shared today, and links to the guests' profiles at womanwarriors.com.